clarify what is I. If it's this, if you start like that, or if you start like that, but you could also start. It's the same with the train, actually. That's why I say narration is a this is the point of view of the little black dot of the sheep appearing. This could be the beginning, the opening, with that early morning sound of a harbor waking up, or a voiceover. And it could go to someone looking, or someone just standing and not yet looking, or starting by someone's not yet looking and then ending by what is looking at. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I is in a train or in this situation, especially in this situation, if you follow, maybe we can switch off this because I feel like...
Yeah, on the stage.
In the situation of this poem of a man alone seeing a boat, if we start like the poem, it's clearly him who is going to lead the narration. Huh? We could also imagine that as for the train, we are speaking of now a passenger of the boat being the very beginning, you know? And maybe not knowing this person is waiting. You know what I mean? So it's the same with the train. When I mean, okay, let's say we take the train. Who do we need to enter the story in a train, or on a train, or inside a train, or by a window, by a voiceover, a person watching, or a person feeling being watched? You know what I mean? This is what narration is. It's not only a setup, you know? It's what, for you, when you tell me the two carriages side by side, for me, there was what, the way you tell us, you give us a point of view. You tell the story from inside one of the carriage, being stopped by another train, you know. You were not outside watching two carriages side by side. You were telling us something as if you were telling the story from inside one of the carriage, if I understood well. Then you describe again the situation, but the first moment you describe the situation was from inside.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, can I say
yeah, sure, of course.
I think I would start from this inside the train and look to cross eyes or look to the other. But I don't know. I wouldn't like. I don't know. I wouldn't like to continue. This I wouldn't be perhaps the person that first saw. You know, I think I could see the other train stop, have I don't know, perhaps I could see the other person and he could not see me, or he or she, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And the train could
But is it
continue.
I or a character?
Let me explain. Because you just mentioned something that could be interesting. Okay, I could continue, and then another shot could come, and then there was another person on the quay that just saw the two carriages going by. And then perhaps this other person could be the I. That we could then enter this third person life a little bit, and the fiction could go not continue with the first eye view that we had.
Of course.
Or it could, or if it was not this third person on the quay, it could also be, well, I am the first one that is looking to the other carriage. But then the next shot, or then the film could continue with that person life that I saw, and I could disappear for, I don't know, for some time in the film, and then I could only appear afterwards. I don't know, well, I'm just, not to be very obvious.
I'm not, you don't have to build a complete fiction. It's interesting the way you told us the situation of two carriages side by side. You use a sort of subjective point of view of someone being in one carriage, feeling and then seeing the other carriage, and maybe seeing that one of the passengers is also watching his direction. You describe this situation in a subjective point of view. When now you say it could be another person in the distance on a quay watching this, it's then less subjective.
Yes.
And it's very important in this kind of situation that my drawings, maybe my English is bad, but what I wanted to mean, whether with the boat approaching, which is exactly, it contains everything to be a subjective narration. As it is, because the boat is far away, it's small, it's told from someone who is watching that boat approaching, so it's subjective. If we would like to keep the same situation, the harbor, very dawn, far in the distance, we could choose a complete other situation. Let's say a guy who is walking in the harbor and who is in charge of clearing the quay for that boat. He knows he has 45 minutes to clear, to make everything ready, or maybe he needs to organize the tugboat or whatever. And he sees that lonely man waiting. Or it could be, as I said, the end, like something happened on that boat and the boat is entering the harbor. But the way you start telling us the story, that's what I want to say, was subjective. And it's not obligatory. They're not, a film is, of course you write a script in a subjective way, but a subjective way is also possible without pretending it's not subjective, with he and they and she, you know. So you could describe that a character is in a train, and the train is stopped on a track, and suddenly realizing there is another train nearby, just on the other track, stopped also, and there is eye contact with someone on the other train, and maybe that character recognizes that person, or is afraid by that person, or is attracted by that person, whatever. And it's not I, it's the character, or a character, or two characters, you know what I mean? That's just film. It's this young man, we are going into his dream by editing. We go into a sort of ballet and sing as his reality seems dull. When cars stop, it's wet, it's raining, there is soldier everywhere, barbed wire. It's a complete, from this shiny ballet cut to this military regime, you know. And then suddenly his clothes are completely appropriate. Everyone around are not wearing ballet traditional clothes, you know. So this is a subjective process to go into a dream of someone, a vision of someone, a dream or a hope or let's say vision. Although we cut from night in a train station, he missed the train, so then he has to take a bus, and the cut is dead. So it means he has missed the train, so he had to travel by bus, you know. So that cut is interesting too, because it tells something about the character, that having missing the train, but the character is the story of the main character, this young man, is not high. Mm-hmm. It's he. He's a hero. You might feel with him all the time, but it's not I, because I is different in film. Mm-hmm. Either you need a voiceover, either you need to film in at a sort of close range, so in a way you can look into the camera and make you understand he is the one who tells the story, you know?
Or you don't film him at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard that way, but
Like a complete subjective film with the camera being one character. In my experience, this works for short. It cannot. The only film I've seen, two films that were subjectively, narratively told. One Hitchcock film and French. I think 90 minutes of subjective camera is really boring. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's... As an audience, I don't believe in a subjective camera too long.
my interest in mechanics of how these things work, a way of expanding possibilities,
It's not mechanic,
or
it's...
closing down possibilities. And so what I'm wondering is, do you think that with the situation you just described, the eye, the person being the camera, which is very subjective, do you think that that can then change to objective?
Sure, for instance,
Yeah.
you let's go into this a train carriage, and it's full. It's a time where the train is full because people are coming back from work or going to work or whatever. So you film the inside of the carriage, and then one of the character is by the window or not too far from the window, maybe sit or maybe standing and watching, and suddenly the train stopped near another train that is also stopped. Maybe there is a red light on the traffic because sometimes there is traffic jam also on rail tracks in the evening or in the morning. And suddenly that character, which is not a high, that is not subjectively, not only sees the other carriage side by side, but recognize someone. This is something immediately to film it like his point of view, or her point of view if it's a woman. It's subjective. And you can go back to the carriage, and someone standing or sitting by that character will realize that the person who sees someone in the other carriage is affected, or afraid, affected, or moved. You know, this is a completely Hitchcockian thing, you know. Let's see that you recognize in the other carriage someone who is following you or who wants to hurt you, you know. You can do it in a very, go back to subjective shot to an objective, you know. Or maybe if you, let's say you're
Use it as a hinge to keep moving the story from what's going on that you're observing to how you're viewing it. And
film are doing that all the time. Film are doing that all the time. The only thing that film must be aware of, if I can speak about film as a person, is to know exactly what it needed to be said or to be felt. Because you can do everything you want. By a cut from night to day, you can express a lot of things, but this is almost mechanic, as you say. It's very simple. Now, it's a little more sophisticated if you want to describe someone who, by watching something, would imagine what it means in the past, like 400 years, you know. What I was mentioning is a pure document. That's why the difference between documentary and fiction is a dangerous one, because in the end, there is a fiction. In a good documentary, there is a sort of fiction that crystallizes after a while. And in a good film, there is also a sort of documentary aspect, because even in that Indian ballet, you could recognize eucalyptus tree, sort of landscape. You have a sort of, because it's not shot in studio, but on location, you have a document of a little part of country of India, in a way, you know?
Which is also not accurate, because of the way you can see it put together. I mean, just, our knowledge of geography means you don't go over a bridge 5 times in a 7-minute sequence. And we were also going through the same cut through the stone. It's a curve a couple times. And so just, we know that they're shooting logistics, compose something that is false. It wasn't just, the shots we saw over 7 minutes were not like...
Yes, but there is something that is interesting in what you say, is we know it's false, and yet we don't know, because it's not exactly like shooting in studio with a green back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same, because it's location, so maybe you use the same train and the same crane movement for the camera and the same bridge on 2 different sides, but it's on location, which means, in a way, maybe you could make some close-up on a certain angle with only sky above, but it's a piece of the land, even though you use it 3 times. It's not completely false. I do not agree. When you shoot on location, even if you cheat a little bit the audience, you shoot on location. So you show some image. And when you shoot a documentary, you suppose, in a way, to be inside the reality, and you know that a documentary is directed. There is a cheat also, in a way, in a documentary. You choose something you want to show. You arrange it so it's frameable. You edit it. So the cheat is both. If it's a cheat, I think it's not a cheat.
A cheat is a tool. It's a tool. It's a set of options for you as a filmmaker. It's part of the
I don't think it's a tool, to be honest. Is that tools?
It's a tool to be honest, but it's not a tool to cheat.
No, I don't think in cheating or being honest is on a moral level. It's a question. I am not speaking on that level of morality to the audience. I'm speaking of what direction you want your narration to go. If you need to use a bridge 3 times, I don't think it's a cheat if it works. You know? The importance of moral and cheating or being honest, it's elsewhere, I think. It's not on the same level.
Yeah, I think the suggestion of the term cheat, we got out on a tangent. That is inappropriate to what you're talking about, sorry. If I gotta say.
No, you don't have to be sorry because it's linked. When you choose a point of view, you have to make sure you are not cheating yourself at the very beginning, and that you are able to carry on, not to make a joke restraint, but to carry on
Yeah.
the narration.
Ultimately, the formal choice of strings and bridges together is a small question in the larger construction. And so whether or not it's a cheat does not really have moral or ethical implications for the larger film. Doesn't it?
You know what? If I ask you to separate what is moral and what is only a way to present the approach of work, it's because I was confused myself by the word tool. Because tool is a dangerous word in the sense that it means you are only dealing with mechanic, screwing things, and in a way a narration has, you have to take care of the mechanic, but it should be taken on a higher level.
That's the goal.
Without, it's not moral yet, it's narration. In the end, you could go to the moral of the narration, but tools, you don't need at the beginning, you know? You need to choose your narration. It's in between tools and the honesty of your point of view. But it's in the middle, and I was interested to debate with you about narration at that moment, more than morality. In the end, yeah, we know we have to respond for what we do, but we know that immediately when we start writing a CV, or you know what I mean. But tool is a little bit embarrassing at the very beginning of telling a story, because it immediately makes you in the mechanic of the story, and it's better to be a little bit in what you decide, where you decide to take the audience to before you go to the mechanic of the story. That's why I say I or she or he or they can be mixed. A subjective point of view can be part of a story, but in the end, even if you can go to a point of view and go back to the larger shot, you, the person who write or initiate this, the film must know where it goes. Even if it's in Amazonia and you're a documentarist and you walk with two guys, there is going to be no storytelling, just to be with them for a day, and it will bring you to understand sort of how could those people have protected their way of living for 300 years after escaping the plantation as maroons, and create their own style of life. This is the documentary, and it's subjective. It's the guy who came from Chicago to study them, and yet it brings you, audience, into a sort of proximity with them, without a voiceover, without a commentary, just by the editing. And I think because the guy used sequence shot, time. Sequence shot means time. Huh? It's like the boat approaching. Sequence shot is time. And it's very important in documentary because then you know that moment of time is not rearranged by editing. It's a piece of time that is real. That's for sure. And it means if it's a piece of time, the film, for example, was shot at 16 millimeters, so it means it could roll 10 minutes. So it means 10 minutes of reality, even if you choreograph it very well, it's real, It's maybe cheating the audience if direction is a cheating, is a tool, but it's a piece of time, So the difficulty would be those 10 minutes with close-up, large shot, and immediately you won't believe that you are in contact with those two guys. I don't know if you understand what I mean. It's because there are no editing that you have, as audience, to accept the duration of the walking with them, and after a while, you realize every move they make, every movement of their face, every noise you hear that is off frame brings you information about them. Those 10 minutes with a lot of editing would create a completely different, I think, more exotic scene, It would be more, there would be more object. The brothers, the two subjects, there will be more object, I think. The sequence shot make them real subjects. They give the time, the pace, the speed. Even though it's
I
because
might continue to bring up tools of filmmaking and mechanics, because it obviously gives you to articulate what you're saying.
And
More
you-
because you don't work that way.
what do you mean I don't work that way?
I don't know.
I think you need to make exception when you're about the idea.
Yeah, the way you
I see.
work,
No.
you define the composition.
Choose is not me.
Yeah.
Filmmaking itself, not me. I'm not sort of pure spirit or whatever. Tools and narration are not happening at the same time. You don't have to be me. For anyone, tools is something that comes. What you want to do is what you want to do. Tools come second. Me, I am not special. That's why in filmmaking, because tools are so expensive in a way, you do have to create the narration first without tools. That's why I was suggesting two space, train and harbor, as a proposal for you, because but I can see it's more I mean, it's interesting to realize that with the train or with this guy watching the boat, there is many possibility of narration, and that's why I wanted to raise with you. To give you an opportunity to take an adventure together and try to see what happened by being in that carriage or on the quay or and not be theoretical. Because narration at the very beginning doesn't need to be theoretical, I think.
So how would you, because there is sort of another perspective which we haven't really discussed, which is a personal, so a subjective perspective, but with a temporal difference. So you have a person, and I mean, I don't have a good example, but who is reflecting on themselves. So it is, the narration is he, but it is the person reflecting on themselves. So, how would you do that?
Let's say the main character as a character. Will have at a certain moment of that story to think about himself, or to decide something about himself, or to go back to his past to make a decision, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Like in L'Intrus, where there was the scene of the man when he first come to the island, and it was sort of the film itself had changed, and there was the grainy of the film, and he was a young man on a boat and came to the island. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. That sort of.
So now this is different. This is different in let's say in terms. What happened was what we wrote the script, and when we wrote the script, we wrote for an actor who was 70 years old. And when we wrote the script, we thought this guy, after changing his heart, having a new heart, do believe he has a second chance in his life. And although he's is not a young man anymore. He can go back. He can go backward because he has a young heart, and therefore he is going where he thinks the better of his life is, which is those islands of South Pacific, in South Pacific, where he might have a son, where life might be better, and a good life, as opposed to the life he had before. And when we were writing the script, we wrote that, but we knew he was not going. We knew, of course, it was a very sad adventure because we knew he was not going to end up with a new life. We knew the change of heart was not a second life. Huh? Was not a change, was only a change of mechanique in his body. It was like an all art, and like changing a piece in your car, you know, because, but it's the same car. And then the actor, I knew nothing about that. I told him, he read the script, and he told me, I know those islands, because, no, I told him, read the script, and when he read the script, I told him, it's good, you're gonna, you will travel a lot, you will go to the Pacific, South Pacific Islands. Oh, I've been there before. It's not surprising. I've been there, I've stayed 6 months there. I said, oh, so yeah, I shot a film there. Oh, and that film was never released, you know. And it took me a year to find piece of negative, you know. But I was not aware of that when we wrote the script, you know. So this came like a sort of
serendipity?
real piece of himself, the same man, young at heart, young in his body, in the country, 40 years before. And already filming a fiction. It was not like a personal, private picture of himself as a young man. It was already a fiction, you know, so it was. I was not aware of that when I wrote the script, so it was fun, really. But then in the end, it was not as fun as I thought because I could not use so much of it. But anyway.
It seems that your casting turned it into a documentary of sorts for the
Yeah.
actor.
As a documentary, only made through fiction. Because sometimes when you need a picture of an actor when he was young, you ask him to bring private image, you know. But to use fiction image is a different thing. It's it creates something very. There is always. I'm always slightly embarrassed when I can see its private image of the real use of the character. You see what I mean of it? You can recognize a child, you know, and you think, it's real, you know. It's better when it's fiction, I think.
It was funny too because the character that he played in the first movie was actually seemed to be fitting very well with the character he played in. Yeah. So the fictions were actually
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it would have been terrible, let's say, if you had told me, I have image of me and my dad and mom when I was 12 and we were living in Tahiti, and you know, I don't know what I mean. I would have felt something weird, you know.
Do you think we should like try to develop your a fiction around these trend ideas that we started, or?
Me, I thought maybe you would be interested in either or, and let's try to choose something together, like an object we could work on. Yeah, I would be happy with that. Instead of, doesn't mean I won't answer your question about my film, but I think it's fun to take something empty and try to
Fill it up.
to move it around and see what's your interest in this or that, you know.
During break, I suggested to Alexandra that we incorporate Harry's idea into what we're discussing, and she said, well, what I want to do is she wants to get rid of my idea, which I'm fond of. And so maybe we can combine Harry's idea about the people getting on and off trains, hopping on and off trains, sometimes illegally, with Alexandra's idea, and give up my idea.
Well,
I think if I may say something,
about the book.
Yeah, I don't know yet. Information.
you can combine all those, but I think it's what you describe, and what you describe is a moment, a situation. What Harry described is slightly different. He doesn't describe a moment in a train, he describes a way, a style of, my English is so bad. He described something vast. People who travel like hobos, you know? This is not what you both describe. You describe a momentum. You at night in your apartment, you on a track, it seems like there, or because you are. And you describe something more.
It's an alternative culture.
Yeah. So I think there is no difficulty in combining, but I don't think it's like three ideas. No. It's a way of living and two momentum. So we could combine those, but it's not maybe it could be the starting point of something, your momentum. And maybe it could be a starting point. What Harry says, it could be the complete film.
Well,
So-
it can also, it can also be. I mean, if we take these three together, that it is the hobo who is seeing into a train,
Of course.
or the person on the train who
Yeah.
it stops and by chance you see someone climb to the top that you don't expect, or whatever.
Or even
No,
the train
of course.
stops and they just see a hobo who's not on the train.
No,
And
no,
then
no.
start
But
thinking.
what I mean is, again, we are blocked into little box, and now if we want to project ourselves into something, a situation is not enough. It could lead us somewhere if we decide to fulfill a momentum with going somewhere, you know?
You're still looking for our point of view. You're still looking for us to establish a point of view.
A little more than that even.
to know where we want to go,
Yeah,
to know
Tracks.
what we want to show.
just a sort of map of, and to start in a carriage or in an apartment or on the roof of a train, it's okay. There is no, but it's interesting to see where we could take it to if we wanted in 2 days.
You have to get up on the roof.
Huh?
You have to get on the
We
roof
should go up.
so we can see.
Up here.
You know what I mean? Like,
On the
no,
roof
no,
here?
not literally. It's, you were saying,
Sure.
because you have to
To
see
have a
it.
perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. But also,
Well, I just remember because he was talking about his experience in trains in America, and then he jumped to his experiences in trains here in Switzerland. So could be a way to join both different. I don't know. It's difficult to know exactly where we want to go, like in 2 hours.
I think
2 hours talking.
no, because of course, let's say, can you imagine in one morning we would all together feel we are in the same train running to the same direction? That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Let's say,
Like Bill Murray in the Darjeeling Limited, where his only character is the man trying to catch a train.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his idea, I like that film because it's what he enjoyed is, because I met him before when he was doing location scouting. He enjoyed that train in India, so he, as an American tourist, not like the hero of an Indian film, but as a tourist, and he didn't want to pretend to be anything else but this kind of very elegant and sophisticated guy. You know what I mean? He kept honestly his experience as the material of a fiction. You see what I mean? And he wanted to use actors he wanted to be with. So it's like 3 brothers looking for a father, and traveling in that train and being sophisticated, elegant guys, and fun, using that train. You see what I mean? So he combined, he used the train to transport son fantasme about these actors and being together in a sort of a comedy. So the train there was really the tool to transport them
And
to
transport the
comic
narrative.
situation, and Romanesque situation.
It's funny how tools work sometimes. Sometimes they give you a point of view or whatever else.
As I said, tools are in that case, the train become a tool. You see what I mean? It's not the camera or the position of the camera, it's the train itself that transports the story. Because it's a closed set in movement. That's why when I start proposing the train, I said the train is completely, it's very addictive when you're filmmaking because it's so close to filmmaking in a way, It takes you somewhere. let's say we let the Pessoa stuff, we keep the train, and we try. Asking you a question, do you think today it's dangerous to travel in train without a ticket? Let's say in Europe or in the States. I would say in Europe there is no more people grabbing a train or traveling on the roof. For many reasons, also because it's electric, very fast train, so it's not the kind of train you can grab. And the train will drive by night, slowly with wooden carriage, transporting goods that you can jump on. They still exist, but they are fewer and fewer. And I guess today, in Europe, anyway, I'm sure if you catch in one of those trains, you don't risk a lot.
Well,
A little fine, not too much. During a war, for instance, let's say the Second World War, you could be shot down if you travel illegally in a train. Is using train, but I'm just speaking of being traveling freely and in Europe or in the States is less, in Europe is less dangerous than it used to be before, except if you're a young Pakistani guy who has been paying to go to England. This is a different thing. Also, if you take train, because you mentioned Poland, for many people in Europe, a train with wooden carriage would immediately, the sound, even not the image, will remind them of the transportation of the Jews to the concentration camp. I think Godard in one film says, I would never film a train ever again without thinking that about the Shoah, So what I was saying, there is a sort of modern life of today is not very well. There is no admission for hobos. That's what I mean. The time of grabbing train, traveling, it exists in India, it exists in Africa. Yeah. But in Europe.
are there a lot of trains in Africa?
Yeah. Have you seen Beau Travail? The opening of Beau Travail is in a train. I'm not mentioning that for you to see the film, but I shot in a train that is very famous that goes from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to the sea in Djibouti. And it's a beautiful old train, more than 100 years old.
In Lisbon, you can still see these young kids driving the old trams, not the trains, but the city electric.
Yeah.
The trams, the old trams.
In Lisbon,
You can see all the kids they are grabbing and they're.
No, but you do that.
But
You don't
everybody
do that
says
because-
no.
no,
everybody
it's fun.
says that. It's fun for them, and we
No.
also.
And I'm not
It's like-
mentioning that the transportation system are less and less meant. The control of the society is different. You don't live anymore
We are
on the side, using train as a system to be transported freely. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We are more accommodated. Also.
No, because society is more control, and there is no space anymore, or less space for clandestinity. There still is clandestinity, of course, but I guess in the 30s it was like admitted that a lot of people could have their own way of living on the side, you know.
Well, it's,
Now society in Occidental rich society, they manage to contain everyone out of inside and not, you know, I think.
I think a lot of it has to do with the layout of the rail network that in the 30s we took for granted as infrastructure in the United States. And so kind of my question about Africa was not, do they have trains as much? What shape is this network of train tracks? And does it connect across spaces? Or is it just sort of like isolated lines that do not connect? And I think that's relates to your question about can you travel freely or not? How extensive is the network and how is it?
Travel freely in Africa, you can always try to travel on the roof of a bus or on the roof of a train. Now, Africa was some countries in the African different history. Some were colonized in a way, some in another way. South Africa has trained because the white people who come in South Africa, they were not going back to England or to Holland. They were staying there, so they built their own way of living, you know. So the train in South Africa are more sophisticated than train in Nigeria or Kenya that were used like in India to serve the economic of the colonial system, which is completely different. But there is no more colonial system since the end of the 50s. But no, this is, no, officially, the last countries claiming independence was in 61, I think. So, but there were...
Mugabe in 80, right? Mugabe in 80, Zimbabwe.
Yeah, no, it's different, Rhodesia. The story of Rhodesia is mostly different, I think. Rhodesia in itself has a story. Rhodesia was independent with white people inside. It's a different story than other countries of Africa, like in South Africa, you know. Like Ghana, for instance, who was independent in the late 50s. So, but we're not going to make a history course about Africa. Let's keep on. And do you think commuting train or subway in a big city has the same, of course you will say no, narrative, transport the same narrations than a train that goes cross a country, cross a border?
It can.
Well,
It's how you
it has a different kind of suspension, though.
What I mean is, commuting trains have a sort of, you can take every day the same train, every day to your work, going back home, and there are commuting trains. Therefore, the segment of
Danger.
city that they offer you is well known. By winter, by summer, by rainy days, by sunny days. Okay, that's commuting train. They have they create themselves their stories, you know. Now a train going somewhere, leaving a place, going somewhere, taking you somewhere which is not your daily distance to go to work and go back home, means traveling. Maybe you can go for a job somewhere, but you go somewhere, there is no immediate, you don't know exactly every meters of the tracks, you know, what Ari mentioned at the beginning about hobos was more like a style of life, like nomads, you know. People were moving because there was nothing to live. There was no possible sedentary life. So the way to survive was a sort of nomad way, where you could find a job today there, a job there, and also in the mind, being transported somewhere, nowhere, but unknown. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's different.
the construction of analogies does not have to be one-to-one. Work versus work. The way I see it, from what you're discussing, is the hobo is very similar to the homeless person in New York City who lives on the train.
No, okay, it's not what I mean. I agree with you completely. I mean that if you choose for transport a narration, a commuting train, or if you choose a train, you don't choose the same narration.
Except,
A commuting train, even if you're homeless and you take only one, doesn't bring you to the same tracks of narration than a train. You know what I mean? It's different. It's just, I don't mean it's better. And if you see 35 shots of rum after you will see, I like connecting train, commuting train. But there is a choice to be made. It's not the same.
except you might be able to construct another kind of story
Yeah.
with a commuting train, even though it is different. I mean, you can, the idea that there's a whole different world. I mean, if you accidentally get off the train at the wrong stop, you know, where you go usually, and it turns out you may be in a completely, you know, foreign culture, which might be great or might not be great.
Yeah.
But so there's that possibility still of traveling and of being disoriented or being frightened or being
Transformative.
excited or being, possibly.
Of
So it
course.
could be adventurous. So.
Of course, I think it's very adventurous. There is a very famous book written by a French guy. He was a journalist, famous journalist, and he chose for a holiday to take the B train, which is a suburb train that goes from north to south. And he spent a month. He told all his relatives and family was going away, so he had a suitcase. And for 1 month he never hit home. He was doing one stop each day, and it's fantastic, really. You know, it's fantastic because it's very tough also. Yeah, I like that book. No, I agree, but it's just that I mentioned that because if you choose transport, you can choose a bus, but because you think it will be leading you to the sort of narration you would like. It's not at all me choosing. That it's different, even though you go out at the wrong station. A commuting train is different than a train, and it doesn't lead you to the same place.
Well, I just proposed that it did because it seems that the difficulties with the specificity of language causes you to often respond negative to somebody or myself saying, I think I know what you're talking about, and you say, no, what I mean is this. And anyway, that's why I mentioned it.
No, I don't think so. I think I'm open to you as much as my English is awkward, but I think by what I wanted to propose is to choose a carriage, whichever, and to try, or a station, or a key, or a place, and to see where it could lead us, whether it's a commuting train or a train. But it's a different